right, here we are. Let's go around the room. Lance, like Lance suggested, let's start with you, Alanson Charles. What is your prediction for tonight?
Author, visionary. We're going to find a way out of this thing, and Trump is going to have a tantrum, and Biden is going to succeed somehow, and we have a blue tsunami coming up.
All right, and I'm Renee, and I believe that Biden is going to rock and roll tonight. I think that he has prepared his entire life and entire career for this. He is far more prepared, far more academically sound, and probably more mentally sound than his opponent. Alan?
Let me check the Magic 8 Ball here. The Magic 8 Ball says, better not tell you now.
That's right.
My actual prediction is Trump is going to be the only one on drugs tonight.
All right, Bob Ross.
Well, I don't know if I have a prediction. I'm feeling unusually pessimistic about this. All day I've been questioning the integrity and the intelligence of our voting population. I know this, that if better sense and common sense and simple logic prevail, then Biden's going to have a landslide of a debate. So that's
absolutely
my prediction.
David Myers.
Personally, I don't really feel very confident about either of them. I fear that Trump's going to come out looking ahead to people, and he may end up back in office, even though most of us don't want him to be. But I personally can't say that I think Biden can run this country either.
You don't like either one of them, right? And they did say that this is like the two least popular, like nobody's really gaga over either one of these guys, right?
Rock in a hard place. It's that's why our system feels a little
No, I don't like it either. We're backed into a corner here. We only have one choice. I hate one choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really worried about Biden's mental faculties, for the most part. It's just a lot of strange slip ups on his part.
He's not doing anything. Those guys are all handled by the people behind the scenes. Believe me, he's following the way. Trump doesn't want to play that game because he's too stupid to play the game. If he had just stepped away, he could have had another term, probably would have won easily, maybe even with a landslide if he'd just given up the ball on January 6th. If he just said, okay, I lost. But he wants to continue on with the lie because he's in the back of a corner. It's a funny thing to watch a kid do this kind of thing. If you have kids and you watch them go into a lie and deeper, if you've done it yourself, if you ever played this game before.
Do you guys think that there's a scenario where perhaps Trump is running for office specifically because he's trying to save face or try to make himself look better after the conviction? In other words, like, look, this may have happened, but I can still run this country, and that just in order to boost his own ego and everybody's perspective of him. I'm not sure.
I think that plays into it, but I think a lot of it. Yeah, I think that plays into it a lot because he's not a loser. Trump's a winner, and he wants to come across as a winner as opposed to a loser. And so I think that's part of it. I think part of it's also he does not want to be. He doesn't want to go to prison, and if he's president, it's going to look really weird if you're trying to put the president of the United States in prison. I mean, they're already bending over backwards deferentially towards him. Like in the New York trial, he says, you were president of the United States and you may very well be again. I don't want to have to, put you in jail, which if you or I or anybody else did half of the, not even 1/10 of the shenanigans he pulled, we'd all be in jail. We'd be in there for the rest of our lives.
Imagine the new Oval Office as prison walls. They just put the desk in there, and instead of the typical agent standing by, there's prison guards.
Okay, guys, so we're lining up now. I guess looks like Biden's just taking the stage here.
All right, I'm going to mute.
Go on that. Can you make that happen? Russ, there you go.
Now, please welcome.
So I got a live shot over here, live debate from CNN. If you go on that one.
Here we go. I'm just going to mute.
Yeah, there he goes. He evidently made it to the podium.
Great to be here. Thank you.
First win.
And please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump.
That's like a game show. So much like a game show.
Yeah. He's not nearly as sprightly coming in as Joe was.
Gentlemen, thanks so much.
No, he's ready.
Let's
He's
begin
going.
the
He's
debate.
coming in
Let's
like
start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern: the economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that
Uh-oh, you
cost
went for that?
$100 then now
Can't
costs
believe that's
more
the
than
first question.
$120.
That's the first question. A
And
basket
typical
of
home
fruit.
prices have jumped
Wow.
more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than
So then they
were
put him on
under
the back
President
foot.
Trump?
First
You
thing
gotta
they
take a
did.
Look at what I was left when I became president. When
Yeah, now.
Mr. Trump left me. We had an
Stay with the
economy that
program.
was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, "It's not
They're
that
trying to
serious. Just
make a
inject a
show
little
as
bleach in your
opposed
arm.
to actually
You'll be all right."
show us
The
anything
economy
substantial
collapsed.
about the
There were no
candidate.
jobs. Unemployment rate rose
Yep.
to 15%. It was
Yeah, I was
terrible.
trying to see how he
So all we
handled
had to do was
himself.
try
That's
to put
right.
things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out in a position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, but there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come of a household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. Price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. And we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build
really
2 million new
Ramble
units
on,
and
you know.
make sure we cap
Blah, blah.
rents.
Right.
so
No
corporate
straight
greed can't
answer.
take
No.
over. The combination, what I was
Yikes.
left with in corporate greed is the reason why we're in this problem right now. In
Bam.
addition to that, we're in a situation where
And
if you
another
had to
thing.
look at all that was done in his
He's
administration.
still going.
He didn't do
You
much at
always lose
all.
me.
By
And
the time
another
he
thing.
left, or things were in chaos. Little
Hi,
bit of
John
chaos.
Duncan from
And so
Australia.
we put
Thank you
things
for
back together. We
watching.
created, I said, those jobs.
Thanks,
We made
John.
sure
Come on
we had
in.
a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue for many people, to $15 for
Getting through the
for,
whole litany. We're
insulin
so
shot
bored with the
as
same
opposed to
list.
$400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug.
Look at
all
Trump's
the drugs they
face.
include beginning next year. And the situation is making.
Can't
we're
remember
making
where he
it
is.
available to everybody.
He's
Trying
trying
to
to
figure out what
figure
rally he's at.
So we're working to bring down the price of around the
He
kitchen
looks like
table.
Grumpy Cat.
That's what we're going to get done.
Well, that might have been a
Thank
good
you,
thing. He
President Trump.
actually is.
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were
That's
copying us. We
bullshit.
got hit with COVID.
Well, we know this to be
and
true,
when
right?
we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By
What?
the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars.
Credit?
So many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and
Hey,
bounce back
Sandy
jobs.
B,
that
thank you
bounced
for
back from the COVID.
watching.
He has
Sandy,
not
come
done
on
a
in.
good job, done a poor
Come on
job.
in, Sandy.
Inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you, President Biden.
Making up
Well, look, the
shit.
greatest economy in the world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he had the greatest economy in the world. And, the fact of the matter is that we
That was
find
good.
ourselves in a situation where his economy
Like that.
It was a
he
good
rewarded
comeback.
the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger
Orlin
than any
Green,
president
thank
has
you for
in any one
joining.
term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant
What happened to
in the
a
military.
good, clean answer?
When he
Just
was
a good,
president, they were still
straightforward,
killing people in
easy to
Afghanistan.
understand.
He didn't do anything about that. When he
Well,
was
that's kind of
president, we
how
were still
Joe
finding ourselves in a
operates, though.
position
You
where
know,
you had
he
a
likes to
notion
talk.
that we were
He likes
this
to
safe
tell
country.
stories.
It's
He
a
likes to,
typical.
I'm the only president
It is. It's
this
a typical
century
ploy.
that doesn't have any this decade that done
As an
any
autistic
troops
guy, I can
dying anywhere in
understand
the
that
world.
one.
like he did.
Context stuff.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
I
You
don't
want
know.
to?
Is this some kind of chess game?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow up. You can do
Is
whatever you
he
want. with the
really
minutes
that
we give
good?
you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cost countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all
China.
fairness to
The
China.
guys who've been paying
It's
him
gonna
for
just force them to pay us
4
a lot
years.
of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history.
That's not
why
true
we had all
either.
the jobs.
Reagan
And the
gave
jobs
the
went
largest
down,
tax
and then they
cut.
bounced back. And he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You
He's
can't do
taking
that.
credit
He
for
also
crap
said
that happened
he inherited
40
9%
years
inflation.
ago.
No, he inherited almost
We have
no
to have the
inflation,
Trump
and it
lie
stayed that way
counter.
for 14 months.
Well, we
And
were
then
trying to
blew
figure it
up
out. I
under
can't
his
know if I
leadership
can
because
keep
they
up with it.
spent money like
You can't keep
a
up.
bunch
It's
of
like a
people that
drinking
didn't know
game
what
with the
they
under the
were doing,
table.
and they don't know what
Well,
they
I
were
was
doing. It
thinking
the
about
worst,
that.
probably
I
the
mean,
worst
yeah.
administration in
Well,
history. There's never been. And as far as
I've got politics
Afghanistan
over
is
here
concerned,
doing
I was
live
getting
fact
out of
check. Let me
Afghanistan,
see if
but
I
we were
can-
getting out with
I can set it up
dignity,
so you
with
can-
strength.
Oh, that'd be great
with
if you can
power.
count. If you can
He
get a
got
count
out.
for
It was
us.
the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
John says,
President
yes,
Trump,
Alan.
over the last 8
Yes,
years,
Alan.
under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt, while so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners
Remember,
and
this guy's
corporations pay
bankrupt
even
on
less
all
taxes
his
than they do now?
businesses.
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy
Exactly.
that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through
Yeah,
COVID
anybody who can
much better
bankrupt
than
a
just about any
casino,
other country. But we
that's
spurred that
pretty
tax was
amazing.
spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing
Biden's
back
got this one
trillions of
figured out.
dollars back into our country. The country was going like never
Yeah.
before. And we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid
He's
gold
been
right
working
under our
these
feet,
words
the oil and gas right under our feet.
for
We were
years.
going to have something that nobody else
He
has
doesn't know what
had.
he's talking
We
about.
got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with.
Okay, here we go.
We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration, even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in
Trump
his
is wrong.
administration.
His tax
He
cut
did the
was
mandate, which
largest
is a
in history.
disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the
How
United
that look
States
on
anymore.
Joe's face?
We're like a third world
Oh,
nation.
he
between
can't wait.
Weaponization
Just-
of his election, trying to go after his political opponent. All of the things he's done, we've become like a third world nation. And it's a shame. The damage he's done to our
Yikes.
country. And I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and
Yikes.
mental institutions to come into our country
Yikes.
and destroy our country.
Yeah, I
President
think Trump
we will
has
get to
jumped off the
immigration,
rail.
later in this block. President
Rails,
Trump, I want to
yeah.
continue to respond to this question about the national debt.
17 minutes.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. I mean, billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a
Uh-oh.
situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If
Yeah,
they just
Trump
paid
needs a mirror with that
24%,
respect one.
25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 million,
Good
billion
point,
dollars, I
Corey.
should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out.
That's
his
not
debt. We'd be
true.
able
We
to
are still
make sure that
respected
all those things we need
if
to
we
do,
can keep
child care, elder care, making sure
Trump
that
out
we
of
continue
office.
to strengthen our
Yeah,
healthcare system, making sure that
Exactly.
we're able to
As
make
long
every
as we
single
keep Trump out of
solitary
office,
person
Biden has brought back a lot of our
eligible for
international
what I've been able to
respect.
do
The
with
fact that
the
he's been so
with
willing
with
to
the
help
COVID,
Ukraine
excuse me, with
against an obvious
dealing with everything we
power
have to
play,
do with,
land grab
Wow.
invasion from Putin
look,
has really upped. I think his
we finally beat Medicare.
profile
Thank you,
particularly with Taiwan.
President Trump.
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people. They cannot believe what happened to the United States of America.
All he
They
has
no
to do is
longer
say friends with
respect
who.
it. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think
Yeah.
we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
This is the first presidential election since the Supreme
can't
Court
respond to
overturned
that?
Roe v. Wade.
He gets to end on this
This
guy's
morning,
criminal.
The court ruled on
An
yet
indicted
another abortion
criminal.
case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that
I wouldn't even
state's
answer this
restrictive
question.
ban.
I would go to that one.
Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However, the federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion pill, and I agree with their decision to have
I
done
can't
that.
believe
and I
that
will not block
this,
it.
this
And if you look at
PolitiFact
this whole
fact check that
question
they've got,
that you're asking,
they're-
a complex, but
they're
not really
nailing
complex. 51 years
about
ago,
the belief
you
about
had Roe v.
everything about
Wade,
Trump
and
and
everybody wanted to get it back to the
Of all the
states.
crap
Everybody,
Trump
without
figured
exception.
out,
Democrats,
this is what they
Republicans,
decide to
liberals,
back check.
conservatives. Everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders.
Good
And
Lord.
what I did
That's
is
kind
I
of
put
blowing
three
my
great
mind.
Supreme Court justices on the court.
Can
and
you
they
type that in
happened
the
to vote
text?
in favor of
Where you're
killing
looking
Roe
at that,
v.
can you
Wade
give the link
and
there?
moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the
Right
states
now.
control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also. And because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible
Yeah.
thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided, supported Roe. And that's this idea that they're all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks,
Oh,
you
no.
don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot
All you had to
see a
do is-
doctor, and
Is
have him decide on what your
cite the
circumstances are.
federal
when you need help.
statute.
The idea that states are
on
able to do
women's
this
rights.
is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states.
Yeah.
Let each state have a different rule. Look,
All you
there's
had to
so
do
many
is
young
quote the
women who have
law.
been-
And
including the
instead, we're
young
going
woman who
back to
just
some
was murdered.
memory lane,
And he went to the funeral. The idea
some
that
story about
she was
But
murdered
it
by
somebody-
Goes back to the
by an
stories.
immigrant
Ah,
coming in to talk about
come on,
that.
Joe.
Here's the deal.
Corey
He
said,
is
come on,
making a
Joe.
Young women are being raped by their
We
in-laws,
can't
by their
send
spouses.
civil
No, but it's
rights
a
back to let
long
each
story.
state
Look, it's a
Right.
right of every
But
woman to
that's a long
choose
story.
what they want.
And they can do nothing about it.
He could
And they
have,
try
he
to
could have
arrest them when they
narrowed
cross
that
state
down a
lines.
lot.
Thank you.
Made it a lot.
It's a
more
woman's
compact.
right to
Young
choose,
women
period.
murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's
Yeah,
the
like
most
Corey
dangerous
Linear
place
said that he
anywhere in the
needs
world.
to be-
Considered the most
be
dangerous
stronger.
place anywhere in the world.
His point's
And he
good. He
opened
just
it up, and these
watered it
killers
down
are coming
with a
into our
story,
country, and they
and
are
as
raping
the
and
person used to
killing women.
professionally tell
And it's
stories
a
and
terrible
stuff like
thing.
that.
As far as the abortion is
You don't
concerned, it
want
is now
to
back to
water
the
down
states.
your
The states
point
are
with the
voting.
story. If the story
In
turns
many
out to be the
cases,
thing you
it's
remember and not the
frankly a
point,
very liberal
you
decision.
just
In many cases, it's the opposite. But they're voting,
We
and it's
lose
bringing it
track
back
of
to
what
the
he's
voting
even talking
people, which
about. He
is
does
what
those
everybody
stories.
wanted, including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which frankly they didn't. But they
Right.
would have.
I'm with you,
Everybody
Corey.
brought back.
We
Ronald
just need to
Reagan
go
wanted it
to
brought
what we
back.
just
Yeah.
had before
Get
Trump
it.
came in, and we're
Everybody
good.
wanted it brought
Let's
back,
start
and
there.
many presidents had tried to get it back. I was the one to do it. And
Everything
again,
was
this
a little
is
better
the
then.
vote of the
I think it
people,
was.
and that's where they wanted it. Every legal scholar wanted it that way.
Staying on the topic of abortion, President Biden, 7 states, I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can
Cite
obtain
the
an
law,
abortion.
Joe.
Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I support Roe v. Wade.
There you
Said
go.
3
Boom.
trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor.
boom, hit
Second
it
time
hard.
is between the doctor
I
and
agree.
an extreme situation.
Bam.
Third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about a woman's
Founders.
health is ridiculous.
Politicians.
That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
There you go.
That means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th
Female
month
bodily
and even after
autonomy.
birth, because some states,
Yeah.
Democrat run,
Well,
take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down.
complete
did what she wanted
human
to do.
sovereignty.
So he's willing to, as we say, rip
That's
the
right,
baby out of
complete
the
human
womb in the 9th
sovereignty.
month
That's
and kill the
what-
baby.
Every
Nobody
person
wants
on
that to happen. Democrat
complete
or
sovereignty
Republican,
over
nobody
their
wants it to happen.
Body,
That's right.
what they
That
do
is
with
simply
Autonomy
not true.
and sovereignty.
The Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger, she's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period. Period.
Under Roe v. Wade, you have late-term abortion. You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law.
Let it go.
51 years, constitutional
Just let it go.
scholarship said
We
it
should
was
have
the
let
right
it go
way to
on
go.
that.
51 years, and it was taken away because this guy put very conservative members on the Supreme Court. He takes credit for taking it away. What's he going to do? What's he going to do? In fact, if the
He put
MAGA
fascists on the
Republicans, he gets
Supreme Court.
elected,
They weren't
and the MAGA Republicans control
This
the
isn't
Senate,
how to
and they
end.
pass
joined
a
the
universal ban on
sorry
abortion,
on the
period,
Supreme Court.
across the board. In
And
6
get
weeks,
5
7 or 8,
fascists, they get to
something
do whatever
very,
you
very
want to do.
conservative. But you're going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch. Overwhelming border states and overburdening
just
cities
dropped.
such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that.
There you go. That's a
made sure
softball
that
to
we
him.
are in a situation where you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. By the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. That's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more border patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do is leave
He's
it.
just
He
mean.
decided to open up our border, open up
I
our
hate
country
this guy.
to
It's
people that
personal
are
attacks.
from
He
prisons.
doesn't
Sounds like his
have to
Adderall's
do
wearing
Are
off.
from mental institutions. And
Well, you know, Biden's kind of
we have the largest
tough.
number of
Look,
terrorists
he's
coming
been
into our country right now. All terrorists, all
gotta
over
stay
the world,
focused.
not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere, all over the world. They're pouring in.
shit. Look at
And
this
this guy just
ridiculous
left it open.
choice.
And he didn't need legislation because I didn't have legislation. I said close the
Welcome to
border. We
the
had the
stage,
safest
Rory
border
Are you looking at
Cullen.
in that
Being
final
here.
couple
Thanks,
of months
Rory.
of my presidency.
Oh, look at
we
that.
had,
Looking sad.
according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the
So
way, who
sad.
endorsed me for president, but
Keep
I won't
going.
say that. But they
Yeah, hey,
endorsed me
hey,
for
Rory.
president. Brandon,
Yeah,
to
people
speak
are
to
just
him.
like,
But
Joe, come
look,
on,
we had
come
the
on,
safest border
Joe.
in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never
Don't
been
ramble.
and
We don't want to
people
know
are
you
dying all
rambling.
over the
Keeps
place,
putting his
including
head
the people
down.
that are
It's
coming
just-
up
oh,
in
He's gonna
man.
have to pick up.
President
If
Biden.
anybody is
The only
on
terrorist
enhancement
who
drugs, I
done
think we
anything
know who it
across the
is.
border
He's got to pick up
is
a
one who came along and killed 3 under his administration.
Get the smelling
Get the
salts.
smelling
Gregory
salts.
Gannon. Get the smelling salts. There we go.
Kill 3
Okay, hold on.
American soldiers. Kill 3 American soldiers. That's the only terrorist that's there. I'm not saying that no terrorist ever got through, but the idea they're emptying their prisons, we're welcoming these people. That's simply not
I
true.
wouldn't even
There's no
talk about
data
this stuff.
to
He's got
support
so
what he
much other
said.
things to
Once
talk
again,
about.
he's exaggerating. He's lying.
President Trump, staying on the
Lying.
topic of immigration, you've said that you're going to carry out, quote, the largest domestic deportation
He finds
operation
it
in American history,
difficult to
unquote.
impossible
Does that mean
to
that
go
you
in
will deport
for the
every
kill.
undocumented immigrant in
Here we go.
America,
Deportation. You
including
guys ready?
jobs, including
We're gonna
those
get to
who
Deportation.
are
around and then
citizens,
he'll get
and
there.
including those who have
It's a-
lived here for
Yeah,
decades?
he's already
And if
covered it
so,
5 times.
How will you do it?
Just 1 second. He said we
We're going
killed
to talk
3
about
people.
immigration all through this damn thing.
Al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, the 2 greatest terrorists, biggest terrorists anywhere in the world. And it had a huge impact on
Al-Baghdadi
everything,
died like
not
a
just
dog.
water, on everything. He's the one that killed people with the bad water, including hundreds of thousands of people dying and also killing our citizens when they come in. We are living right now in a rat's nest.
believe this.
They're killing our people in New
A
York,
rat's
in
nest?
California, in every state.
Are
in
they
the
I haven't
coming
heard
over?
that
I
we
just,
don't have borders
man,
anymore.
my friend
Every
Jose
state
is an
now
amazing
He has an audience. His
because
drone
of
audience.
his
worker, man. Doesn't
ridiculous
kill anybody.
insane and very stupid policies. People are coming in.
How
and
many
they're
people
The
know
killing
Mexican
migrant,
have
the
an audience.
migrant
And another thing
criminal
we
rate
do
is
is we call it
much
migrant
lower
crime.
than the
I
American
call it
citizen criminal rate.
migrant crime.
That's just
They're
that's
I
killing
like
us.
Mexican
It's
people
at
a
level
lot.
we've
Yeah,
They're
never
my
it is.
seen
friends.
before. And you're reading it like these 3 incredible young
I
girls.
don't know
I
who he's
have no
talking
problem
about.
with migrants.
One of them I just spoke
I
to.
have
the
no
mother,
idea who he's
and
talking
He's
about.
talking
he just
about
had the funeral for this girl,
he's
12
talking
years
about
old.
his
This is
criminal
horrible what's
associates
taking
overseas.
place. What's
Against,
taking
like,
place in
Putin
our
and
country,
Putin's
we're
guy.
literally
He's talking about
an
criminality and he's a
uncivilized
convicted
country now.
felon.
He doesn't want it to be. He just doesn't know.
Yeah.
He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything
How is
like
that
it.
not
We have to
relevant?
get
Can
a lot of
Biden,
these
so
people
how
out
can
of there
Biden
to get
pull out of
them
this?
dead,
Let's see.
because
Look
they're
at
gonna
Biden
destroy
pull out
our
of this. Come
country.
on, man.
Just
You
take
can
a
do
look
it.
at where
Just
they
talk
are.
about
Come on,
something
man,
else.
they're
living
believing
in
it.
Just say
luxury
convicted
hotels
felon.
in New York City and other places.
34
Our veterans are
times
just
indictment.
they're
Come
dying
on.
because he doesn't
Yeah,
care
Convicted
about our
felon. That's
veterans.
all
He
I gotta
doesn't care. He
say.
doesn't like the military
right.
at all, and he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been worse. I
Exactly,
have the highest
Gregory.
Oh my
approval rating for
God. Biden
veterans
just did
taking
that
care
You
of
mean
whole
those
VA.
losers?
thing.
He is the worst. He's
Oh
gotten
my
rid of
God.
all the things that I
What's in it
approved.
for them,
Choice
right,
that I got
Trump?
through Congress, all of the different things
Biden
I approved,
did-
they abandoned. We had by far the highest, and now it's down in less than half because he's done all these great things that we did. And I think he did it just because I approved it, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
fact checker,
But he has killed
please.
so many people at our border by
Someone
allowing
fact
all
check
of
this.
these people to
Put
come
a
in.
single
And it's a
President
very
Biden.
sad day in America.
President Biden, you have the mic.
Every single
besides the
thing he
one
says
fact
is a
checker
lie.
for the police.
Every
The
single one.
relevant
Hold on, hold
Biden-
on.
Here we go. There
Hold
we
on,
go.
wait, wait,
A
wait.
hell of a lot better.
Everything
officers.
will say he
That's
said
the
was a
fact
lie.
act. 1 million of them now have insurance and their families have it. Their families have it because what happened, whether it was Agent Orange or burn pits, they're all being covered now. And his group opposed that. We're also in a situation where we have great respect for veterans. My son spent a year in Iraq, living right next to one of those burn pits, came back with stage 4 glioblastoma.
I just
I
lost
was
my.
recently in France.
Fred
for
said,
D-Day,
"Joe's getting feisty
and I
now."
spoke to all
I
about
see it
those
always, yeah,
heroes
you
that
know.
died.
Yeah,
that's
come
a
on,
real
Went to the
story.
World War II cemetery, World War I cemetery.
Loosen your
refused to go
tie
there.
and
He was
let him
standing
have
as
it.
4-star general, and he told me, he said, "I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and
Yeah, the
suckers."
fact checkers
My
are
son
stroking
was not
out,
a
Greg.
loser, was is not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
You're the
There you go.
loser. You're the
Give it to
sucker.
him,
First of
Joe.
all, that was a made-up quote. Suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I
trust
didn't say it.
General
And
Billy
think
a
of this.
lot
Who
more
would
than I
say
trust.
I'm
Yeah,
at a
which 19
cemetery or
people?
I'm talking about our veterans because nobody's taking better care. I'm so glad this came
Our
up and he
Constitution,
brought it
John
up.
Duncan. I'm sorry,
There's
man. I
nobody
can't
that's
do anything
taken
about
better
it.
care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would,
Constitution
in
does not
front of
prohibit it,
generals
John
and
Duncan.
others, say suckers and losers. We have 19
He's lying
people
through his
that said
teeth.
it was never said by me. It was made up by
Always
him.
has.
Yeah,
Watch a guy lie through
Russia
his
was made
teeth.
up,
One
just
lie,
like the
right?
51 intelligence agents are made
He's
up.
just lying,
That's what it
Just
looked
the
like.
lying,
When
media,
somebody's
the
lying.
lying through
economists
their
are talking.
fucking teeth.
It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son Hunter.
I think
It
that
wasn't
look
Russia
on his
lies.
face
disinformation.
is last.
He made up the
Joe's
suckers and
face that is
losers.
I
So
don't
he
know.
should apologize.
Blood
to
is
Russia.
coming out of Trump's mouth.
Four-star general standing at your side was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are their family. The only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home and their families and equip them when they go to war. That's what we're doing. That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you
God,
so
these
much.
guys go
Topic
rat
of foreign
tail.
policy. I want to begin with Russia's war against Ukraine, which
This
is
is
now
crazy.
in its third
Thank
year.
you all for being here, by the
Former
way.
President Trump,
You just
Russian
can't imagine
President
watching this by
Vladimir
myself
Putin
either.
says he'll only end
No, we're in
this
it
war
together,
if
guys.
Russia
We're in it
keeps the
together.
Ukrainian territory it is
I
already
wasn't gonna
claimed,
watch it by
and
myself.
Ukraine abandons its bid.
I
would be like-
Watch it with y'all. This is
Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
I would need a new
First of all,
TV after this.
Our veterans
Yep.
and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst
Well-
commander in chief, if that's what you call him,
No, Biden,
that
don't
we've
get
ever had.
pulled
They
in.
can't stand him.
Who's
Stay
Let's get
that?
high.
that straight.
I've never read that
And they like
anywhere.
him more than just about any of them.
Yeah,
Oh
you
my
hate
And
him.
that's based on every single bit of
The more
information.
lies.
As far
There it
as
is.
Russia,
There
There
you
you
Come
go.
on,
Yeah, now he's in. Yeah,
the
woohoo.
president that knew that was respected by Putin. He would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers.
You
He
can
did
never.
nothing to
This
stop it. In
guy
fact, I
is
think he has
Hey,
courage.
Ukraine
to
is
fight
doing
like
just
this.
yarn
fine.
I'll tell you what
salesman.
happened. He
Thanks
was
to
so
our
bad
weapons
with
that we're giving to
Afghanistan.
him.
It was such a horrible embarrassment, most
Those weapons
embarrassing
that you
moment
held,
in the
you
history of
know,
our country.
saying, hey, you
But
got
when
anything
Putin
on
watched
Hillary?
that and he
Got
saw the
anything on
incompetence that
Hillary?
he should
And
have
Joe
fired
Biden?
those generals like I fired the one that you
We
mentioned.
could have had a nice.
So he's got
you
no
know.
love lost,
Hey,
but he
who
should have
knows?
fired those
I'll
generals.
give you
No
your weapon.
general got fired for the most embarrassing.
know,
Hold on,
moment
let's
in the
wait
history
for his
of
about
response.
Biden's
Afghanistan,
kid.
where we left billions
on,
of
quiet,
dollars
everybody.
of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, "You know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take my." This was his dream. I talked to him about it. His dream. The difference
Yeah.
is he never would have invaded Ukraine. Never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded
Oh, hey,
in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything.
What's
No
he going
money
to
for
do to
terror.
this thing?
That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
President Biden?
oh,
Never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. Look, the fact of the matter is that we're in a
Malarkey.
situation where, let's take the last
Malarkey.
point first.
Got the malarkey word.
Iran
Yep.
attacked American troops,
You serious?
caused brain damage for a number of these
this is
troops,
drinking game.
and
We
he
have
did
to-
nothing
He
about
keeps
it.
going
not
back
about
He was
over
president.
Trump's story,
They
trying to
attacked.
reinvent it.
He
It's
said
not
they're
working.
just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number two, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number
He's
three,
going back
found
over
ourselves
his
in a
stuff, trying to
situation
redo
where
it. This is
if you
not
take a
working.
look at what
Just
Trump did
totally
with-
ignore Trump.
this guy told Trump, do whatever you want and do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. And listen to what
Welcome,
he said
Manny
when he went
Zamora
in.
to the
He was gonna
stage.
take
Thank you,
Kyiv in
Manny, for
5
being
days,
here.
remember?
Yeah.
The
Manny.
Soviet Union. That's what he wanted.
Hey,
to
Mr. Van Zandt.
And he, in fact,
About
didn't do it at
time,
all.
good buddy.
He wasn't able to get it done, and they've lost.
Well,
lost thousands.
I kept
and
seeing
thousands
9
of
o'clock, so and
500,000
then I forgot. No, it's
troops.
Eastern time.
President Trump,
I
as I
never
come back
said
to you
that.
for 1 minute, I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the
No, they're
territory
not
in Ukraine.
acceptable. No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between
Snarky,
Putin and
darky,
Zelensky
malarkey.
as president-elect before I take office
I
on
like that.
January 20th. I'll have
Me
that
too.
war settled. People being killed so
I'll have that war
needlessly, so
settled
stupidly,
48 hours.
and I
I'll
will
have
get
that
it
war
settled, and
settled.
I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
Oh, good
then
lord.
why
Yeah,
do you
call
have
me,
to-
my buddy Putin.
The fact is that
Yep.
Putin is a war criminal.
Go for it
He's
now.
killed thousands and thousands
We'll
of
back
people.
you
I
up.
like how
And
Putin was
he has
sharing his
made one
dream
thing clear.
clear.
He wants to reestablish what was
Go into the
part of the
kill.
Soviet Empire.
Yeah,
Not
that
just
is
the East,
interesting.
He wants all of
Yeah.
Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks
Biden.
away, by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on to the Middle East. In October, Hamas attacked Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking
Here we go.
hundreds of hostages. Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden, you've put forward a proposal to resolve this conflict, but so far Hamas has not released the remaining hostages, and Israel is continuing its military offensive in Gaza. So what additional leverage will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one, everyone from the United Nations Security Council straight through to the G7 to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan I put forward. Which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas. Number one, they're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened in Israel? We're finding the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so they're 2 different things. Hamas
Look at Trump's
cannot
face.
be allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts and our intelligence people as to how they can get Hamas like we did bin Laden. You don't have to do it.
Yeah, you got
By the
rambling
way,
stories. You
they've
got to get to the
greatly
point.
weakened Hamas.
I never
Greatly
understood
weakened them.
this
They should
stuff.
be. They should be eliminated. But you've got to be careful for
My name is
using
Lance. I
certain
get to the
weapons
point.
among population centers.
Just going back to Ukraine for 1 second. We have an
Oh.
ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent 100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. The Secretary General of NATO said Trump did the most incredible job I've ever seen. They wouldn't have any. They were going out of business. We were spending
Turn his mic off.
100% of the money was paid
He
by
said
us.
I was the best. I was
He didn't do
wonderful.
that.
Look at
He's
Joe's
getting all
face.
this- You got to ask these people to put up the money.
Malarkey.
Over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of
Malarkey.
location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one that wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have a minute.
I've never heard so much foolishness. This is a guy who wants to get out of NATO. Are you going to stay in NATO? He's going to pull out of NATO. The idea that we have our strength lies in our alliances as well. It may be a big ocean, but we're ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe?
That's what
What
Putin
happens
wants.
if,
He
in
wants
fact, we
NATO
have
dissolved.
Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. You see what happens then. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, I got 50
Use
other
hell.
nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace. No major war in Europe has
Is
ever been
Alana
able
being
to contain just
sarcastic?
to Europe.
President Trump, just to follow up, would you support the creation of an independent Palestinian state in order to achieve peace in the region?
I'd have to see. But before we do that, the problem we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade deals with the European nations because if you add them up, they're about the
Oh, yeah,
same
you did a great
size
trade deal with
economically.
China.
Their economy
farmers
is
will
about the
thank you
same
for that.
size as the United States. And they were no cars, no, they don't want anything that we have, but we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that.
Farmers will be very
The big
upset
thing I
with you.
changed is they don't want to pay.
To the
And the only
European
reason
Union.
that he can play games with NATO
I've never heard
is
such
because I got
shenanigans in
them
my
to put up
life.
hundreds of
Talking.
billions of dollars. I said,
What
and
happened
he's
to
right about this. I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question. Would you guard us against Russia at a very secret meeting of the 28
That was very
states
telling.
at that time, nations at that time?
It's all
I said,
about the
"No, if you
money."
don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened?
That's right. It's
Billions
an
and
extortion
billions
racket.
of dollars
You
came
know,
flowing in the next
Trump's
day
a-
and the next
Trump's a-
month.
fancies
Now
himself
we're in the same
an
position.
international
We're paying
mob boss,
everybody's
making
bills.
sure he gets
Let's turn to the issue of
Gets his
democracy.
goodies
Former
from,
President Trump. I want to ask
the,
you about January 6,
his
2021. After you
client.
rallied
Okay,
supporters
hold
in
on.
New
Don't
York,
say,
most of them stormed the Capitol to
Quiet.
stop
Well, I don't know. I
constitutionally mandated
can't
counting
promise
of
what's going to
electoral
happen.
votes.
It's a
As
nice
president,
business
you
you
swore
got
an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy
What?
independent. On January 6th,
I'm
we
going
had
to
the
deflect to
lowest
the
taxes
wall.
ever.
The wall,
We had
people.
the lowest regulations ever. On January
back to
6th, we were
immigration.
respected all over the world.
Oh my
All over
God.
the world,
Good
we were
Lord.
respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch
you
of
know,
stupid people.
his
What
audience of
happened to
people
the
that
United
he was-
States'
he wishes would be
reputation
sitting out
under
there in
this
front of
man's
him,
leadership
those folks are
is
eating this up.
horrible, including weaponization, which I'm sure at some point you'll be talking about.
He
where
showed
goes
Joe
after his
Biden what a
political
real
opponent
bird.
because he can't beat him
All
fair and
that.
square.
You have 80 seconds left. My question was, what do you say to those voters who believe that you violated
Because
your
you didn't answer the
constitutional oath
question.
through your actions and inaction
You
on January
deflected.
6, 2021,
Well,
and
of
worry that
course.
you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to anybody. I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy Pelosi, if you just watched the news from 2 days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, they say, but she's saying,
Film?
oh, no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor of,
No.
in
Didn't do
writing,
it.
by the way, the mayor in
no.
writing turned it
Nope.
down, the mayor of D.C. They turned it down. I offered 10,000.
They turned
because
it down.
I could see. I had virtually nothing to do. They
Yes,
asked me
they
to go
did.
make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying they're going to be there
Oh,
on January
Biden,
6th.
all he
They're
has
gonna
to
be there.
do is just
And I said, you know what?
really
There's a lot of
nothing.
people coming. You could feel it. You could feel it
Did
too.
anybody else
and you
hear
could
this?
feel it. And I said, they got to have some National
What
Guard
is
or
going
whatever.
on here?
He's
And they
waiting. He
offered
wants
it
to.
her,
He
and
wants
she
to
now
jump on this.
admits that she turned
This
it
is his
down.
question.
And it was the same day she was, I don't know, she can't be very happy with her daughter because it made her into a liar.
Wants to
She
make
said, I
sure
take full responsibility for January
everybody
6th.
understands it was
President
rigged.
Biden?
He
Hold on,
lost.
stop.
He didn't
Here we go.
lose,
Quiet.
and Biden is illegitimate.
I sat in the dining room off the Oval Office. He sat there for 3 hours, 3 hours watching, begging, being begged by his vice president and a number of his colleagues on the Republican side as well to do something, to call for a stop, to end it. Instead, they talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll now forgive them for what they've done. They've been convicted. He says he wants to commute their sentences and say that no. He went to every single court in the nation. I don't know how many cases, scores of cases, including the Supreme Court. And they said, no,
So
this
much
guy
easier than
is
this.
responsible for doing what was done. He did do a damn thing. And these people should be in jail. And they should be the ones who are being held accountable.
Yikes.
And he wants to let them all out. And now he says if he loses again, such a whiner that he is, that it could be a bloodbath.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Whiner.
What they've done to some people that are so innocent, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What you have done, how you've destroyed the lives of so many people when they ripped down Portland, when they ripped down many other cities. You go to Minnesota, Minneapolis, what they've done
Keep
there.
going. Let him go to
with the
Ferguson.
fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of they took over big chunks of Seattle. I was all set to bring in the National Guard. They heard that. They saw
They
them
did
coming,
that
and
on
they
your
left
watch.
immediately. What he said about
They
this
did it
whole-
for a reason. They were upset
Hold on.
because of you.
One other thing. The Unselect Committee, which is basically two horrible Republicans that are all gone now out of office, and Democrats, all Democrats, they destroyed and deleted all of the information they found because they found out we were right. We were right. And they deleted and destroyed all of the information. They should go to jail for that. If a Republican did that, they'd go to jail.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, I want to give you a minute.
The only person on the stage is a convicted felon is the man I'm looking at right now. And the fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up in Capitol Hill. And all those people, every one of those who were convicted, deserves to be convicted. The idea that they didn't kill somebody, just went in and broke down doors, broke the windows, occupied offices, turned over desks, turned them over statues. The idea that those people are patriots, come on. When I asked him the first two debates we had, I said, will you denounce the Proud Boys? He said, no, I'll tell them to stand by. The idea he's refusing, will you denounce these guys? Will you denounce the people we're talking about now? Will you denounce the people who attacked that Capitol? What are you going to do?
I'm going to give you a minute, President Trump, for a follow-up question I have. After a jury convicted you of 34 felonies last month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly what it means about you feeling you have every right to go after your political opponents?
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right now it's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times. Should have been convicted before, but his Justice Department let the statute of limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the
Death caused at the border?
prosecutor, otherwise you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that,
I did nothing wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged.
we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor having to do with the son. This man is a criminal. This man, you're lucky. You're lucky. I did nothing wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. You want to respond? Go ahead. I'll give you a minute to respond.
The idea that I did anything wrong relative to what you're talking about is outrageous. It's simply a lie, number one. Number two, the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history has spoken like that before. Number three, the crimes
Yeah, but
that
I
you are
did.
still charged with. And think of all the civil penalties.
Look at
you
her
have.
face.
How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn
He's nodding.
star on the night
Here we go.
while your wife was pregnant? I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Give your minute, sir.
I didn't have sex with a porn star. Number one. Number two, that was a case that was started.
She described your penis.
and moved. They moved a high-ranking official, a DOJ, into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to be appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people, and both the civil and the criminal. He basically went after his political opponent because he thought it was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases are. But when they found out about these cases,
No,
you
that
know
was
what they did?
the first
My poll
truth.
numbers
He
went
doesn't
up
care
way
about
up.
the
You know
cases.
that because you're reporting it. And we took in more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has ever taken hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in.
She did.
Because the public knows it's a scam.
She picked
It's
out
not a
Guy
fucking
that's fighting
business.
his political opponent because he can't win fair and square.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you
And
have
Cohen
said,
is
quote,
fixer, pretty
Donald
Wait a
Trump and
second.
his MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy
He's not gonna get to
American
respond to that.
democracy. Do you believe that the tens of millions of Americans who are likely to vote
Ilana
for President
is
Trump
chanting
will be
Bernie.
voting against American democracy?
Yeah.
The more they know about what he's done,
Wow.
yes, the more they know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases down
A
the road
porn
coming
dabbler.
out. He's got a whole range of issues he has to face. I don't know what the juries will do, but I do know he has a real problem. And so the fact that, could you ever think you heard any president say that I'm going to seek retribution? You ever hear any president say that I thought Hitler had some good ideas? What got me involved to run in the first place after my son had died, I decided in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying swastikas on torches, and singing the same anti-Semitic bile they sang when back in Germany. And the young woman got killed. I spoke to the mother, and they asked him, they said, what do you think of those people? The ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it, and the ones he said, I think they're fine people on both sides. What American president would ever say Nazis coming out of fields carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas were fine people? This is a guy who says Hitler's done some good things. I'd like to know what they are. The good things Hitler's done, that's what he said. This guy has no sense of American democracy.
President Trump.
Jake, both of you know that story has been totally wiped out because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on this. So he just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency, he's without
All he has to
question,
do is start
the worst
there, justify his
president, the worst
presidency.
presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be having a debate about it. There's nothing to debate. He made up the Charlottesville story, and you'll see it's debunked all over the place. Every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day, it came out where it was fully debunked.
Thank
It's
you, John
a
Duncan.
Nonsense story. He knows that, and he didn't
I
run
said
because of
debunked
Charlottesville. He
50
used that as an
times.
excuse to run.
President Biden.
And debunked. It happened. All you have to do is listen to what was said at the time. And the idea that somehow that's the only reason I ran because I was worried a guy like this guy could get elected. If he thought they were good people coming out of that forest, carrying those torches, then he didn't deserve to be president. Didn't deserve to be president at all. And the idea that he's talking about all this being fabricated, we saw with our own eyes. We saw what happened on January 6th. We saw the people breaking through the windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top cabinet officers refused to endorse him this time. His vice president hasn't endorsed him this time. So why? Why? They know him well. They serve with him. Why are they not endorsing him?
Thank you, President Biden. We're going to be right
There you
back with
go.
more from the CNN presidential
Oh,
debate.
Lord. Ugh.
Nothing but a lion dog.
That's like, it's just like, it's so exhausting to watch this crap.
Ugh. It's exhausting to look at Joe looking so exhausted.
That too.
Oh, man.
Does he not know that
Remember,
everything he said is recorded?
well, up until
Yeah.
now, Joe is at the long line of these handled presidents. Okay, he's got the government and these guys. They used to be working together, and it looked like to some degree that every once in a while we got a little crumb. But now it's divided into this civil war. We've got to go blue in order to keep anything that looks like a government, whether you like it or not. Okay, it's just going to look like the old government we had. It's going to be Biden, and he's not. Whatever. Generally, we've all made money in this election. I mean, this 4 years has been good for generally people. We've been killing people with COVID, and now we have more jobs. Isn't that funny? There you go.
Yep, totally agree.
I
hate this choice, but I mean, I have to go with blue simply because of
that was one of the
potential
lies that Trump said,
dictatorship.
was that more people died of COVID after he left office. That's not true. That's simply flat out a lie. Okay, we know that. I've watched
100,000.
the numbers. I watched the numbers all through
Yeah.
2020 and when he was president, and over 1 million people died. And then they vaccinated just the way Joe Biden laid it out. Let's vaccinate everybody. Try to get vaccination. Let's do the old people first. And then it started to go down and down and down and down.
Right? And
I remember
we all had it.
Deaths closely too. I watched
So
the
Trump-
deaths real closely.
People died when he was in office. It was great when I was in office.
Well, okay, so this is the thing. So, and then there's people who just love this guy. So I can't understand how they do that. But this is, I mean, you're calling who from Georgia, right? My buddy Bob over there is beside himself thinking that 50% of Georgians really believe that this goofball Bumpy is going to, take us anything less than to the Fourth Reich.
Yeah, all I know is voice of reason on one side, and we know what kind of batshit crazy is on the other side. We've seen it.
We
saw
got to get
4
rid of
years
these guys. They're taking
we
apart
saw-
everything. They're literally this whole
He's admitted
Supreme
he's going to
Court
be a
connection.
dictator on day one. Guess what? Day one's going to be a long time.
Fuck. It's a day one is going to be
Yeah.
a long,
Well,
longest day. That's your longest day.
And his new line tonight was
Well, man,
his retribution is going to be his success.
we've been
No, I meant my success will be my retribution. Oh yeah.
Okay, so here we go. Are we back to is it starting at the beginning or is that it?
Beginning August 19th.
No, it's just on a break right now, so
Yeah.
they're just running.
I mean, I don't know what they're doing now. A shot in the ass might
Oh.
give little Bitey a little help. Maybe he should get a B12.
Oh man.
anyhow, I was saying we live in Texas, and Abbott is already getting his red state MAGA fascist government, firmly in place. They're doing more voter suppression stuff. I mean, it's
Poor
it's
Texas.
really kind of
Poor
not. It's scary. Yeah, poor Texas
Scary.
is
I mean,
exactly right. I feel
And then
Georgia,
but this is the thing. We knew that if we went this way, it was gonna have to be reborn. But remember, we got stolen in Gore, we got stolen in Clinton, and we got here we're doing it again. Here we go.
Under your presidency, Black families still earn far less than white families. Black mothers are still 3 times more likely to die from
Trump's going to say, "I've done more for Black people
Black
than any of the
Americans
presidents,
Of course, oh, yeah, of
even
course.
Abraham Lincoln."
of white Americans.
Listen
What do you
for it.
say to Black voters who are disappointed that you haven't made more progress?
They acknowledge they made a lot of progress, number one. The fact of the matter is there's more small Black businesses that have been started than any time in history. Number two, the wages of Black unemployment is the lowest level it's been in a long, long time. Number three, we're providing housing for Black Americans. and dealing with the segregation that exists among these
God, can you get a straight answer out of this cat, man?
to keep people out of their houses. In addition to that, we find that
he stutters.
the impact on the choice that Black families have to make relative to childcare is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was able to reduce Black childcare costs. I cut them in half. You got to make sure you pay childcare costs. You got to make sure, because when you provide those childcare protections, you increase economic growth because more people can be in the job market.
These facts are all checkable
There's
too.
more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any Black family first-time home buyer should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home so they can get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those Black families and those Black individuals who provided had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing, anything having to do with volunteerism, if they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest was forgiven after 10 years. Millions have benefited from that. And we're going to do a whole lot more for Black families.
Thank you, President Trump.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation, and he's right. It's been very bad. He caused the inflation, and it's killing Black families and Hispanic families and just about everybody. It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food where it's doubled and tripled and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not living anymore. He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it with his
That's a
Green New
total
Scam and
lie.
all of the other, all this money that's being thrown out the window. He caused inflation. As
No,
sure
he
as you're
didn't.
sitting there, the fact
Greedy
is
CEOs
that his
caused the
big
inflation.
kill on the Black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking Black jobs.
There we go.
now.
Back to the
It
border.
could be 18,
Oh.
it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking Black jobs. And
They're
they're
taking a
this-
job.
You haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
Thank you. President Biden.
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back, 15% unemployment. He decimated the economy, absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was no inflation at the time.
Audacity.
There were
Yeah,
no jobs.
really.
We provided thousands of millions of jobs for individuals who are in all communities, including minority communities. We made sure that they have health insurance. We have covered, if the ACA has increased, I made sure that they're $8,000 per person in a family to get written off for the health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that. They tried 50 times. He wants to get rid of the ACA again. And they're going to try again if they win. You find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing any, we put more police on the street than any administration has. He wants to cut the cops. We're providing for equity and making sure people have a shot to make it. There's a lot going on, but in inflation, he caused it by his tremendous malfeasance in the way he handled the pandemic.
Thank you. Another persistent
Oh, it's a
challenge
tax
is
cut.
the climate crisis. 2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and rising sea levels.
You need to clean up those
Former
forests.
President Trump, you vowed to end your opponent's climate initiative.
Jewish space
but will you
lasers.
take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Well, let me just go back to what he said about the police, how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump. Almost every police group. And what he's done to the Black
Almost every.
population is horrible, including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Super predators was his name. And he called it to
He
them.
didn't say
They've
that.
taken great offense at it. And now they see it happening. But when they see what I did for criminal justice reform
Hillary
and for the
said that.
historically Black colleges and universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the opportunity zones with Tim, as you know, Tim Scott was incredible. He did a great job. Great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea, and it was a great idea. It's one of the most successful economic development acts ever in the country. Opportunity zones, and the biggest beneficiary.
Tim Scott,
are
the guy that
Black.
wanted to take
And
away
that's
Social
why
Security?
We have the best
Yeah.
numbers with them in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever the best numbers.
Ever.
He's lost much of the Black population because he's done a horrible job for Black people. He's also done a horrible job for Hispanics. But wait till you see these millions of people pouring into our country, and they're going to take the
Millions
job.
of
And it's
people at
already
the
started,
border.
and you haven't seen anything yet. It's a disaster.
You've 38 seconds left. President Trump, will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely
This was
immaculate
a
clean
question about the
water,
climate.
and I want absolutely clean air. And we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever.
We had the
And
best water.
We were using
The
all
best
forms of
H2O.
energy, all
No
forms of
windmills.
energy. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever.
Oh.
And my top environmental people
God.
gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage, actually.
I don't know where the hell he's been. The idea that anything he said is true. I passed the most extensive climate change legislation in history.
Yeah,
In history,
true.
we find ourselves, and by the way, Black colleges. I came up with $15 billion for HBCUs, historic Black universities and colleges, because they don't have those. They don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any Black student is capable in college of doing what any white student can do. They just have the money, but now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he is claiming to have done something that had the cleanest water, he hadn't done a damn thing for the environment.
I'm sure the people
He
of Flint
part
are
of the
surprised at
Paris
that.
Peace Climate Accord. I immediately joined it because if we reach
Yeah, he pulled out of the
1.5
climate accord.
degrees
That's
Celsius,
right.
and then he went,
Yeah.
there's no way back.
And the
The next
Supreme
step
Court
for
killed
humanity
affirmative action.
is climate change, and he didn't do a damn thing about it. He wants to undo all that I've done.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States. And I ended it because I didn't want to waste that money because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones who was costing us money. Nobody else was paying
Needed
into
to give
it.
it back to
And
the
it was
rich
It
people.
was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because the migrants coming in, they want everybody. And look, I have the biggest smile on the stage. I guarantee you that. And I want to take
God, he
care
wants
of
to blame
people.
everything
But
on
we're destroying
migrants.
our country.
Kevin get
They're
using
taking
all
over
the
our schools,
insulin.
our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Yeah. Okay.
The idea is that we, in fact, we were the only ones of consequence who were not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything? We're not able to, the United States can't get its pollution under control. One of the largest polluters in the world, number one. We're making significant progress. By 2035, we will have cut pollution in half. We have made significant progress, and we're continuing to make progress. We set up a climate corps for thousands of young people will learn how to deal with climate, just like the Peace Corps. And we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements of cause of pollution. But the idea that he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one, voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company cannot have to pay.
Thank you.
And by the way,
So every day, millions of Americans struggle just to make ends meet. For many older Americans, Social Security provides a critical lifeline. President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
yes, make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Right now, everybody making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time of the first one they get when they're 18 years old. The idea that they're going to, I've been proposing that everybody, the millionaires pay 1%. 1%. So no one I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that you think that would be able to help keep Social Security solvent, or is that one enough?
Well, no, that one enough will keep it solvent. But the biggest thing I'll do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security. He thinks there's plenty to cut in Social Security. He's wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare both times. And and if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that I believe supports.
Mention Tim Scott.
Want to cut it as well. The idea that
that's Trump's buddy. He just mentioned him.
Seniors is ridiculous. And by the way, the American public has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And on the ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Only thing that allows them to have that insurance is the fact that they, in fact, are part of the ACA. And by the way, the other thing is we're in a situation where I talk about education for Black communities. I've raised the amount of money for Pell Grants another $8,000. So anybody making under $70,000 a year is going to be able to get $15,000 toward their tuition. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
No, he's
So
just
I've dealt
lying.
with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen it. He can look you in the face about so many other things too. And we mentioned the laptop. We mentioned Russia, Ukraine.
Here we go.
Ukraine. Everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation. The losers and suckers story that he made up is a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, he's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country. And they're putting them onto Social Security. They're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid. They're putting them in our hospitals. They're taking the place of our citizens. What they're doing to the VA, to our veterans, is unbelievable. Our veterans are living in the street, and these people are living in luxury hotels. He doesn't know what he's doing, and it's really
none of that's true. None of that's true.
None of that is true.
Country before.
President Biden.
The idea that
It's invasion of the statues.
By the way, when I said suckers and losers, he acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired because he's the one that acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it, number one. Number two, the idea that we're going to be in a situation where all these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking away our jobs. There's a reason why we have the fastest growing economy in the world, the reason why we have the most successful economy in the world. We're doing better than any other nation in the world. And by the way, those 15 Nobel laureates he talked about being phony, those 15 Nobel laureates, economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession and inflation is going to increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
President Biden, thank you so much. Let's turn to the cost of child care, which many American families struggle to afford. President Trump, both you and President Biden have tried to address this issue, but the average cost of child care in this country has risen to more than $11,000 a year per child. For many families, the cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You'd pay a price for it.
But you hired them all.
I inherited these people. I didn't put them there. I didn't put Comey there.
Lie.
I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that Afghan the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now, all of a sudden, he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters.
Feel like at the line of Walmart
I
about
don't
now.
think we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance.
Here he
of
goes.
Coming out of this rut.
Tantrum
We
time.
probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He is the worst in history by far.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
We're the most admired country in the world. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We have the finest military in the history of the world.
There you
The
go.
finest
Come on, Joe.
military in the world.
There he goes,
No one
Joe.
thinks we're weak.
Rock
No
it,
one
buddy.
wants to screw around with us. Nobody. Number one. Number two, the idea
Number one.
that we're talking about worst presidents. I wasn't joking. Look it up. Go online. 159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number, presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted who's the worst.
Why would you talk about this
president in
shit?
history. One through best to
God.
worst. They said he
Because
was the
Trump,
worst in
you know,
all
threw
of
that at him.
American history.
He's the worst. He's the worst president. He said it like
That's not
15 times
conjecture.
already.
He can
You
argue
just got to
them
say
wrong. That's what they voted.
ridiculous.
The idea that he is not doing anything to deal
But
with
it's a
34
fact.
times indicted,
Trump,
convicted.
all these historians put
We should
Trump at the very
significantly
bottom of the
increase
list of
childcare tax
presidents.
credit.
Biden
We
made
should
number
significantly
16 on the
increase
list.
The availability of women and men.
I'm not
single
whatever.
parents to be able to go back to work, and we should encourage businesses.
And Trump is calling the
hold
country a
and
shithole.
Thank you,
And
President Biden.
Biden's saying,
Well,
hey,
President
we're the
Trump,
most
question
respected
was
country in
about
the
what would
world.
you do to make
It's the
childcare
truth.
more affordable? If you want to take your minute.
Just so you understand, we have polling, we have other things that
That's
they
it. Waste your
rate him
minute
the
on the
worst.
border
Because
again.
what he's done is so bad. And they rate me, I'll show you, I will show you. And they rate me one of the best, okay? And if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes
Yeah,
like
laugh
us.
at him, Joe.
He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump
Well,
tax
just
cuts to expire. So everybody, including the two of you, are going to pay 4 to 5
I
times.
know. It's a
Nobody
really,
ever heard of this before.
Andy,
all
I
my
get
life,
you.
I grow up and I see politicians talking about cutting
Gotta
taxes.
stay above
When we
all
cut
this.
taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing money back into our country. The worst president in history by far, and everybody knows it.
President Biden?
Look, the fact of the matter is that he's dead wrong about, he's increased the tariff, he will increase the taxes on middle-class people. I said I'd never raise a tax on anybody making less than $400,000. I didn't. But this tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming into the country, you know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500 a year more because they're going to have to pay the difference in food and all the things that were imported. Number two, he's in a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he's somehow helped the middle class. Middle class have been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You had the largest deficit of any president in American history, number one.
Yep.
Number two, you have not, in fact, made any contact, any progress with China. We are the lowest trade deficit with China since 2010.
Thank you,
were at the
President Biden.
highest. You lost
Thank you, President
$160,000.
Biden. Let's discuss an epidemic impacting millions of Americans that both of you have made a top priority in your first term, the opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up. Under your term, it went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now?
They're coming in over the border.
Who are struggling to get
Yep,
treatment
exactly.
they need?
Right.
He's going to do it
Finish
again.
up. We now have the largest deficit in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China.
Nope,
He
not
gets
true.
paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets
can look
money
those
from
numbers
China.
up.
We have, so I think he's afraid to deal with them or something. But do you notice he never took out my tariffs because we bring in so much money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our steel industries and there was more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst situation with China. China's going to own us if you keep allowing them to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our
Nothing's
country.
happening with China.
So, President
China's
Trump,
in
you
a
have
mess
57
right now. I
seconds
know
left.
that
The
because my wife
question was,
lives
what are you
there.
going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Yeah,
Jake,
talk
we're
about
doing
the
very
question
well
at
in
hand.
addiction until the COVID came along. We had the 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before, any country in every way. And then we had to get tough. And it was the drugs pouring across the border were, it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog. That's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen, the way they can spot it.
Just
We
one
did a
dog.
lot. And we
He's
were
a
getting
cute dog.
very low
I've
numbers,
met the dog.
Very, very
He
low
loves
numbers.
me.
Then he came along. The numbers, have you seen the numbers now? It's not only the 18 million people that I believe is even low because the gotaways, they don't even talk about gotaways. But the numbers
How
of
did you come up with this
the amount
number?
of drugs and
Keep
human
saying 18.
trafficking in women coming
China.
across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across our border now is the largest we've ever had by far.
President Trump, thank you. President Biden?
Fentanyl and the byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl, these big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more be able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues, said, "Don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically." No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines. We need those machines. And we're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it together. That's what we have to do. We need those machines.
A lot of the
Thank you,
ingredients that
President
goes into
President
fentanyl
Trump.
comes from the
Again,
United
question is
States.
about Americans in the throes of addiction right now, struggling to get the treatment they need.
Thank you, Biden, for answering the
This
question.
does pertain to it. He ended Remain in Mexico. He ended catch and release. I made it catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico. I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage, we always pay $6 billion for a hostage. Every time we say it's a hostage. Now we have a hostage, a Wall Street Journal reporter. I think a good guy. And he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly as soon as I take
24
office,
hours.
before I take office. I said
Just a phone call with Putin, my
literally,
buddy.
as soon as I win the election, I will have that reporter out. He should have had him out a long time ago, but Putin's probably asking for billions and billions of dollars because this guy pays it every time. We had 2 cases where he paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out and I paid essentially nothing.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about.
And I gave him a bag of Cheetos.
President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your second term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record, look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 15 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs. More investment in America.
Stick with the facts, Joe.
Billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought an awful lot of people. Well, The whole idea.
Welcome, Carrie
computer
Harrison, to
chips,
the
we used to have 3%
stage.
of the
Hello,
market.
Carrie.
We invented
Well,
it,
hello, you guys.
and we lost it because he was sending
You
people
settle down, Carrie. We're at the end of
find
this thing.
So
jobs
much to say
overseas
about
and
this,
then bring home a product.
I can't wait
Without
to hear it.
I went to
interrupting
South
and
Korea.
ruining it.
I convinced Samsung to invest billions of
Stay here,
dollars here
Carrie.
in the United States.
I'll just
And
stay
then,
here like a
guess
good
what?
spaniel.
Those fabs they call them,
Thank
to,
you.
to
Good boy.
build these chips. Those
'Cause this
fabs
is
are over
rough.
$100,000. You don't need a college degree for them. And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea is
Yeah.
that somehow
He's a
we are,
liar.
this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Name me a single major country president who wouldn't trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us. All of our allies and those who he coddles up to, from Kim Jong Un, who he sends love letters to, and Putin, etc. They don't want to screw around with us.
Thank you. Former President Trump, to follow up, you would be 82 at the end of your
That's
second
gotta
term.
hurt.
What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know. He took none. I didn't
Camera,
take one, just
elephant,
one. A really easy
giraffe.
Oh,
one.
man.
I
Let's
go
get
through the
back into
first
that
5
one.
questions. He couldn't do it.
Look at
Oh
Joe.
my
But I took 2
God.
Look at
cognitive
Joe.
tests. I took physical exams every year. And, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won
I haven't
2
had wood
club
in years.
championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships.
Melania
To do
knows
that,
it.
you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a
He's
shape
the
as
champion
I was
of his club.
25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit
Yeah.
better.
He's won that thing every year. That guy is
President, I'm
unbeatable.
gonna play golf every other day.
Years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced them. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy. when he
Ronnie
was a White House
Jackson.
doctor. And then I took
Sometimes I
another
call
one,
him
a
Ronnie
similar one.
Johnson.
Yeah,
both-
he had a
one of them said
reputation
they'd
in
never seen
LA for
anybody ace it.
sure.
Thank you.
$20, get
President
whatever
Biden.
you need.
You can
Yeah.
see he is 6'5".
20 bucks.
Got his name right.
Yeah, let's go get that guy.
Well, you said
Probably 200
6'4",
now because
200.
he's got inflation.
Well,
Oh,
anyway,
I think we're
that's
missing
either-
some good dits in
anyway,
here.
Just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him.
Ah,
I got my handicap, which when I was
Oh,
vice president,
great.
down to a
Look at
6.
this.
good Lord.
And by
cares?
the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry
They're
your
going to
own
measure
bag.
each other's things in a
We're going to
second.
play golf.
He's a 6
If
handicap.
you carry your own
Roll.
bag,
I was at 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I have, how many?
I've seen you swing. I
I'm
know you will.
embarrassed.
hey,
The
his
average
mic is
voter
on.
is
President
Oh,
Trump,
my
Mike is
God.
on.
Let's not act like
Lots
Fuck,
of
you're
money.
not talking
Thank
about
you.
you have
golf.
a
That's
specific
for sure.
concern that voters have about you. Will you pledge tonight that once all legal challenges have been exhausted,
That you won't be a
that you will
dictator.
accept the results of this election, regardless
Just
of
day
who wins,
one.
and
Penile.
Day one will last
Listen,
about 4
listen,
years.
everybody.
in any
This is the
form
soundbite
is
you want.
unacceptable.
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable. And if you would see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time, and also my statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to. And I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear. But the answer is, if the election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a
Didn't
great
answer the
president
question.
because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment because I wouldn't have been his political opponent because he indicted me because I was his opponent. I wish he was a great
He didn't
president.
indict
I
you.
would rather have that.
He had
I
nothing
would-
to do with it.
No, my being
That was-
here.
that was
the
the
only
New
reason
York
I'm here
court.
is he's so bad.
Stop
as
being
a
a criminal.
that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again.
You
We're
said
a
that
failing
since
nation right now. We're a
2016.
seriously failing nation. And we're a failing
Didn't have it.
nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are
Because that'll be
very,
after
very
World War
close to
II.
World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him. They don't fear him. They have nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going to drive us into World War III.
You want a World War III, let him follow and win, and let Putin say, do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want. There's a thing called Article 5. An attack on one is attack on all, and required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who would
The
trade
audacity.
the job I've done, what they've
Did it
done.
freeze?
Because we are a powerful nation. We have wonderful peace because of the people, not me. It's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv. Make sure
This
they
guy
move
cannot
on,
close a
see what happens
deal.
in Poland, Hungary,
Just
and
put it in
other
front of
places
him.
along that border. Then you have a war.
President Trump, as I come back to you for a follow-up, the question was, will you accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
Just to finish what he said, if I might.
Yeah.
Russia, they took a lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew not to do it. Not going to play games with me. He knew that. I got along with him very well, but he knew not to play games. He took nothing from me. But now he's going to take the whole thing from this man right here. That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started ever with me. And he's going to take Ukraine.
Yeah.
And, you know, you asked me a question before, would you do this? He's got us in such a bad position right now with Ukraine and Russia, because Ukraine's not winning that war. He said, I will never settle until such time. They're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers. They've lost so many
fine.
people. It's so sad.
He's talking for Putin right now.
They've
This is
lost
Putin's
the
puppet.
gorgeous cities with the golden domes.
Might
that
as
are
well be
1,000 years
Vladimir
old,
Putin
all
sitting right
because of
there.
him and stupid decisions. Russia would have never attacked if I were
President Trump,
president.
the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins,
Just-
yes or no?
He gets to answer it again.
Fair and legal and good election? Absolutely. I would have much rather accepted these, but the fraud and everything else was ridiculous. And if you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week, or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely.
But I
there's
will
nothing
still have
I'd
no
rather
proof.
do. It would be much easier for me to do that than I'm running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did. He's destroying our country. I would be very happy to be someplace else, in a nice location someplace.
Well,
Like an
we have to let you do that.
No political opponents.
We love that.
because It's the only way.
When does this guy say those magic words that puts him
driven up my
the
numbers.
hell out of here?
Driven up
The
to a
reason
very
you're
high
in this
level because the
war,
people
in this
understand
fight,
it.
is because you don't want to go to
Let's see what your
jail.
numbers are when this election is over. Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time,
Exactly.
you appealed and
Ah!
appealed.
He does not want to learn. He does not want to learn the way.
Single court in America said any of your claims had any merit, state or
Yes,
local.
Make
None.
that happen.
But you continue to provoke this lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation, all this stealing. There is no evidence of that at all. And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. The idea, if you lose again, you accept anything, you can't stand the loss.
Yeah.
Whiner. Lost the last time.
We'll be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate.
Whoa.
Live from Georgia.
You got to stand there.
You mean this is not over yet?
Wow.
It's 10:31.
This is
Just keep going.
You know, as
talk about a
riveting as this
slog.
is-
Go ahead, Carrie. Tell us what
Talk
you think.
about a slog.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put your mic on. Put
Oh.
your mic on. Put your mic on. There you go.
Oh,
Carrie,
Okay.
put your mic on. Carrie, we cannot hear you, Carrie.
Cannot hear you.
Right, turn the volume up, something like that.
We got dead air, Carrie.
He's coming. He's gonna fix it.
We'll figure it out. We all did. We were just there a
It's
second ago.
All right, there we go. Sorry about that. Had stuff routed through endless chains of equipment. What I was saying is the appalling part of all of this is the fact that CNN are journalists. What that means is it is their obligation to follow the rules of a debate, which is one of the main rules is you're not allowed to lie. You can fudge stuff, you can angle it, you can skew it, but you can't do a bold-faced lie. And if you do, CNN, that has an unlimited budget, hundreds of thousands of staffers that can do real-time fact-checking, they should step in and say,
Well,
that is...
no. Whenever he's...
They should step in and say that is a lie. And the fact that they're not doing that, why not just turn it over to academia? Have a University of Illinois with moderators.
Not true.
Never mind. There we go.
And
so what happens is,
and Biden looks so fucking old. It pisses me off. I'm still going to vote for him. But...
So what happens is you have.
Hey Bob, can you mute?
Really mean spirited.
It's okay.
And it's just.
So you have hundreds of millions of viewers who are anticipating something like a fair fight. Now, CNN clearly told them, do not look at the camera. You are not addressing the audience. You must look at the moderators. Donald Trump will do whatever Donald Trump wishes, and CNN does not bust him on that. That's why it looks strange that Joe Biden is looking off into the corner the entire debate, and Trump is connecting directly with the audience because he's violating the simple rules, which are online and they're public. And so that CNN is not stepping up and doing their job and saying respectfully, former Mr. President Trump, we asked you not to look at the camera, but to direct your comments to us. He would also be looking away. So these are structural problems that end up creating giant propaganda that make Joe, who's doing a shitty performance, let's just admit it. It's awful. He's got laryngitis. He's exhausted. He should say, hey, I have laryngitis. Why? Because the world is filling up with fascism. Countries are being taken over by dictators at the speed of light, all of which were teed up by former President Trump. And now I'm out there trying to fix that problem, and I get 3 hours of sleep a night. This is an exhausting job. What does Trump get? What's the payoff? Why does he want to be in there? Even if we had 1 hour of pure rage out of Joe Biden, it would stand for something. So
right. He doesn't.
This is tough. But it's
That's
tough.
the problem.
It's tough because he could. But the thing is, he doesn't want to be president for 4 more years. He doesn't want to be 85, 86, going through every day of living hell. And you could see there's no passion. Trump has
here we
passion.
go.
Trump
Here we
does
go.
not want to spend the rest of his natural life in the slammer with Bubba knocking on his jail cell bar going, come on, baby. Come on.
We have to make sure that we have a fair tax system. I ask anyone out there in the audience or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair? The fact is that I said nobody making under $400,000 had a single penny increase in their taxes and will not. And if I'm reelected, that'll be the case again. But this guy has increased your taxes because of the deficit. Number one, he's increased inflation because of the debacle he left after where he handled the pandemic. And he finds himself in a position where he now wants to tax you more by putting a 10% tariff on everything that comes into the United States of America. What I did when, for example, he wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare for us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. Well, guess what? We got it down to $35 for insulin instead of $400. No more than $2,000 for every senior, no matter how much prescription they need. You know what that did? That reduced the federal debt by $160 billion over 10 years because the government doesn't have to pay the exorbitant prices. I'm going to make that available to every senior all along. It's happening now, and everybody in America. He wants to get rid of that. I'm going to make sure that we have childcare. We're going to significantly increase the credit people have for childcare. I'm going to make sure we do something about what we're doing on lead
Let Trump
pipes and
talk
all the
last.
things that are causing health problems for people across the country. We're going to continue to fight to bring down inflation and give people a break.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax, but he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do, all he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. Our military doesn't respect him. We look like fools in Afghanistan. We didn't stop Israel. It was such a horrible thing that would have never happened. It should have never happened. Iran was broke. Anybody that did business with Iran, including China, they couldn't do business with the United States. They all passed. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, for terror, no money whatsoever. Again, Ukraine should have never happened. He talks about all this stuff, but he didn't do it. For 3.5 years, we're living in hell. We have the Palestinians and we have everybody else rioting all over the place. You talk about Charlottesville. This is 100 times Charlottesville, 1,000 times. The whole country is exploding because of you, because they don't respect you, and they have to respect their president, and they don't respect you throughout the world. What we did was incredible. We rebuilt the military. We got the largest tax cut in history, the largest regulation cut in history. The reason he's got jobs is because I cut the regulations that gave jobs, but he's putting a lot of those regulations back on. All of the things that we've done, nobody's never seen anything like, even from a medical standpoint, right to try, where we can try space age materials instead of going to Asia or going to Europe and trying to get when you're terminally ill. Now you can go and you can get something. You sign a document. They've been trying to get it for 42 years. But you know what we did for the military was incredible. Choice for our soldiers, where our soldiers, instead of waiting for 3 months to see a doctor, can go out and get themselves fixed up and readied up and take care of themselves, and they're living. And that's why I had the highest approval rating in the history of the VA. So all of these things, we're in a failing nation, but it's not going to be failing anymore. We're going to make it great again.
Thank you, former President Trump, President Biden.
That's the first time they called him
Stay with
former
us because
President Trump.
We have full analysis of this debate. Anderson Cooper and Aaron Burnett starts now on CNN.
Ugh. This thing was freaking rigged.
Man, that was a slog.
And not
Yeah.
towards Biden.
Is this when Biden takes out a gun and shoots the guy?
No.
Oh.
No, you
Darn
should
it.
just throw holy water on him. That's all he has to do.
Oh man, that was sick, and that was worse than a game of that's like
But
I don't know,
Gary's
watching
right.
Orange is the New
They
Black
keep calling
or
all the
Breaking
lies.
Bad or any of those.
They did in previous debates. They called all the lies out. You know, oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but that's not true, Mr. Trump. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah, they
and they
didn't
call
do
him
that.
President Trump the whole time. He's not the president.
Well, it's going to be weeks of unpacking this thing and
they
talking
let him
about who said
close.
what. Oh my God.
And now, gas bag, the guy that lies all the time, you get to close.
Oh man.
God Almighty.
Oh my.
Yeah.
What did we see there? Is everybody okay? Okay, just count your fingers and count your
No.
toes.
Well, I count my fingers. I'm
Well,
sure of
you
peace of
know,
mind.
I'm
Biden
still
performed
scraping
better in
pieces
the
of my
last
head
one
off
than he
the
did
wall.
All right,
I'm,
Gary, bring it in.
I'm going to say something. I do want to. I want to mention this. I came into this trying to put my mind into a place where I'm an undecided, and one that didn't. The hard part is not knowing what I already know, but trying to imagine myself as not paying attention and coming in and watching these two guys. And I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't blame any undecided for just not even going. I mean, I'm going. I know who I'm voting for. I've known the whole time because I want democracy. I would vote for a drunk monkey right now over Trump. So
Just like last time, we all have to.
yeah. So anyway, I'm gonna have to go. I have to make a phone call. Peace to all of you all, and man, I'm good luck with this discussion.
Thanks, Bob, for coming in. You're great.
Bob.
I appreciate it. See you next time. Carrie, what do you
I'm
say?
officially terrified at this point.
Oh, Alan, go for it. Terrified? Yeah. Well,
I'm hoping.
Yeah, I'm actually terrified at this point
I'm
because
hoping that tomorrow.
my
one at a time here, guys.
Okay,
Go ahead,
who's going to go first? Which one? Okay,
Go ahead.
I'm officially terrified at this point because there are going to be a lot of people watching this, and yeah, Trump was talking nonsense and lying and all this kind of stuff, but his delivery and his showmanship was very much more present. He Joe talked sense, but Joe looked weak, and I hate to say that because I'm rooting for Joe. I'm voting for Joe. I'm hoping Joe wins. But now I'm officially terrified because there's going to be a bunch of people out there who saw this and thought, oh, yeah, Joe Biden, he is just not cut out for this. We got to have somebody who's vigorous like Donald Trump. Oh, my gosh. So I'm officially terrified at this point. This is about the worst debate performance I have ever witnessed. And I've watched a lot of these things all the way back to Ronald Reagan in the 80s. Well, actually the 70s. So yeah, I'm officially terrified.
Well, there you go again.
You know, it's interesting that we're actually discussing the debate in terms of poise and comportment like it's a fashion show. 20 years ago, it would have been content, agenda. What really matters to the American people? All this is hairstyles, perfume. Did they lean? Did they not lean? Did they smile? And that's because it's that bad. There really was almost no substance. To Biden's credit, he attempted to answer questions. To Trump's credit, if you're on that side, he answered no questions. And it is within the right of CNN as the moderator to say, if you refuse to answer our questions, we will stop asking you those questions and give your opponent extra time. They violated every possible rule that they have as moderators and gave free passes to a guy staring at the camera, connecting with the audience, while the sitting president is looking off in the corner and talking to the moderators. An executive producer at CNN, a giant corporation, made the decision where to place the cameras and how the rules would go. And the fact you didn't bust one of them on breaking these rules, which changes the impact of the entire narrative. We're talking about poise and comportment. And was Sleepy Joe asleep? Was he awake? Does he need heroin? Does he need Adderall? What does he need? I mean, it's appalling. And we're stuck with everything rides on this. Now, will the second debate actually have some animation? Hopefully, Joe will be through his laryngitis. Hopefully so. He should admit that. He should explain why he's whispering like this. It's not that I don't care and I'm bored. It's that I can't talk anymore because I get 3 hours of sleep and we're in like 48 fucking wars all at the same time that the guy before me set up. Project 2025. Project 2025. He should have gone on a 2-minute riff on what that is. Dismantling the federal government as we know it. Getting rid of the EPA. Getting rid of OSHA. Firing hundreds of thousands of federal employees that actually did.
Brother.
Yeah. This is what should have happened. He should have been talking about that and saying, go to Donald Trump's website. If your last name ends in a vowel, or you may end up in a concentration camp, or probably one of your relatives. If your name ends in a vowel, you are fucking toast for the rest of human history in this country. If Project 2025 goes through, that's what this is all about. 900 pages written by the Heritage Foundation, rubber stamped in order to put Donald Trump in there, and he will execute it. And execution is the important word here. But we didn't see any of that. We just, unfortunately, here we are talking about hair and nails, which some people are good at. Not me so much.
All right, Manny, what do you say?
Well, this went about pretty much as I expected. Trump pontificating and lying and, of course, talking about the border, blaming everything on the border. And unfortunately, Biden looking old and tired and weak. Because it's like Harry said, I mean, he is actually on the job. He's getting 3-4 hours of sleep. He's worrying about the country. He's doing stuff. But the unfortunate thing is that we don't see that. We don't see everything that he is doing. And having all the MAGA Republicans in Congress, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and Matt Gaetz and all these clowns, isn't helping either when they're opposing and supporting Trump's lies. They can't even keep a speaker for more than a month, apparently. And what they talk about all the stuff that Biden isn't doing, right? Oh, he's not doing this, he's not doing that. Well, your Congress, what are you doing about these things? Instead, Trump mentioned, oh, he's a complainer. Well, so are they. And so was he. He was complaining about Biden the whole time, calling him the worst president and so on. And so are these other people. But what are they doing? See, nobody's asking that. What are you doing? If you really think that President Biden is ineffectual or not doing his job, what are you doing to fix these problems? We talked about the immigration bill, the bipartisan immigration bill. Everybody seemed to support it, except the MAGAs, who, probably got a phone call or email. Please, don't support this. It's going to hurt me in the election. Yeah. And killed it. So who really is the one destroying the country here? And it's exactly what everybody says. If Trump gets in there, Project 2025 goes into effect, and anyone who isn't, and pretty much the whole country's fucked. It doesn't even matter if you're Republican or Democrat anymore. It's gonna be MAGA. It's gonna be Trump. It's gonna be his country, and the rest of us are just gonna be toast. So that's my view. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got to say about that.
Well, I feel the same way. Alanson here. So looking at the whole thing, at the end of the day, we're going to need those 5 things. A place to sleep, clean water and food, energy, and jobs. So now, of course, there's a lot of economic indicators that we need these Mexican folks to come across, because we don't have enough people to fill that particular job, to pick our food for less money, to do those menial jobs that these folks just seem to gravitate towards. So because our workforce has been led to believe that they are entitled to just get a gun and try to shoot 20 rounds. So it's an interesting kind of situation we're in. So of course, we have to go with Biden, but having one choice is like having no choice. And so it's really, it's a weird place to be backed into. Here, this kind of democracy or this kind of totalitarianism, which do you want? I mean, what? There was nothing in between? No, there's nothing in between. We got to go all blue, and we got to scrub this thing. And then we got to go after the Supreme Court and create some type of justice there that actually follows laws. But, I'm just glad that I'm no longer feeling as I'm alone and isolated. I feel like, at least in this room, and thanks to Renee, we have a group of people that, like, we have to stick together and try to bring us to other folks. Because all I can say is there's probably going to be a green balloon in the concentration camp. And when they ask you if you want to shower, just say no. Just don't go to the showers.
It's funny you talked about the immigrants coming in and taking jobs that we don't want. I just found out today, I have roofers up on my roof this week, changing my roof. These guys who are obviously migrants that work up on these hot roofs, they make $400 a day. So it's not like they're taking shit jobs for shit pay. They're just taking shit jobs that nobody wants to do. They're getting paid for it.
Okay, well, $400 a day is a good wage, no question. $200, and then it was like that. But here again, I know all of my friends are Mexican. I have a lot of Mexican friends. They come and they do the work and they just say thank you. So a lot more, and sometimes they work for nothing. And so, it's part of it. I happen to be working on the front lines of creating homeful and hungerless people. I know folks who live in the riverbed. I know folks who live in their, the side of their thing, trying to save $1, living in their car. That's what's happening. So anyway, so glad you guys are all here, and thanks, Carrie, for showing up. And we really need you to help us, take the word to the big folks. I think that, I elect you to go up against and tell them those things. But let's go send Carrie to CNN and explain what they did wrong.
I'm hoping that all journalists who, are worth their salt bring up all of these things tonight and tomorrow. The fact check. I want everybody to fact check everything Trump said. They wanted to point out the fact that he always kept going back to the border, no matter what the question was.
He never answered a question. He lied into endless.
The fact that they were supposed to look away from the camera, and Trump looked right directly into the camera. Again, I hope that they point all of this shit out.
Well, but that's what we're here to do, though.
The cheater that he is, that we all know he is.
So now I didn't catch that, Carrie, and that's why we bring you in, because you know stuff. Carrie knows stuff about things like this. And so he can look in there and see, these are rules he's supposed to follow. I didn't know there's any rules. I thought, this is what happens. So please help us and help your audience, go to it and understand what just happened. It was a completely disregard for anything. While one guy's trying to follow the rules, another guy's completely not following rules. And we like both kinds of people, but not when it comes to keeping Social Security and Medicare vibrant for the next.
Trump and his team were going into this saying that they thought that this was going to be rigged, that the moderators were going to be mean to him, and it couldn't totally be more opposite. They were calling him Mr. President the whole time.
Yeah, but that's not unusual. I mean, ex-presidents always get called Mr. President. I mean, that's not. No,
not
and
one.
His microphone was still on. Did you catch that? He was able to interrupt Biden, but Biden was respectful and didn't interrupt him.
And he was rubbing up against the microphone.
Yeah. Well, can I just jump in here and say something that Lance said just now about Biden being the one guy respecting the rules and the other guy flagrantly breaking the rules. I mean, that pretty much sums it up. That is the summation of what we're facing One guy wants to follow the rule of law. The other guy believes the rule of law doesn't apply to him. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people who seem to agree with him. I mean, I've seen people with T-shirts saying, "I'm voting for the felon." I mean, people who wouldn't hire a felon are saying, "Yeah, I'll vote for him. Sure, why not?" Because he's there. I've heard people because he's their felon. Yeah, and people say, "Yeah, well, we need a dictator." These are people who don't know what a dictator is, who've never had to live under.
Well, it's true. And let's remember that the average IQ of a human being in the world, not America, but in the world, is 100. That's the average IQ of a live, upright mammal human being, a Homo sapien. 100. It is pitiful. 90 is retarded. 100 is you can go to Publix and figure the difference between strawberries and a grapefruit. So these are the people, the lower third, and it's always 1/3 of any cultural population that is susceptible to dictators. They're the ones without the education. They're the ones the Führer courted in Germany in the 1920s. The NSDAP, during the famous beer hall speeches that Hitler gave, what was going on that attracted thousands and thousands of people into the beer hall? Was it to hear a guy go on long gasconades about Jews and this and that, World War I? No.
Free beer.
Free beer. That's what filled the beer halls. Then there's a guy doing stand-up in the corner. Whether they hear him, whether they don't, it doesn't even matter. It's an irrelevancy. But they were able to point to the numbers, the metrics as they were back then. They could say tens of thousands of people are supporting Adolf Hitler. And then you put that in the newspaper, it becomes a fact. Donald Trump has the benefit of claiming that every living thing on earth loves him. Every male wishes to be him. And the fact is, 1/3 of this country, and remember, 2/3 is sane. That's why we have highways, street lamps. That's why we have trade airplanes that often are on time. Not often, but sometimes are on time, not always delayed. We have Uber. We have systems that work because 2/3 of us are normal. 1/3 abnormal. That 1/3 is being given permission by the first president of the United States to do whatever they want. They can grab pussy. They can grab hundreds per day with no consequences. That white women shall not have any abortions. Black women, not a problem. Not a problem. Never mentioned. Latinas, never mentioned. In fact, it's preferred that they all abort and eject. But white women, no, absolutely forbidden. And all of this is happening because Donald Trump offers more. What do the Democrats offer? Almost nothing, because they don't discuss much, and they should. But they're the party of less. Drive less, burn less gas, pollute the water less, eat less meat, etc. Trump is hundreds of barbecues per day, all you can eat red meat on a daily basis, unlimited women, which you can own, slap, beat, and own as property, bring back slavery, wipe out Medicare, Social Security, because it's for communists and Mexicans, et cetera, and these goober smoochies, these knuckle-walking Hispidolites don't know better. It's not their fault that they grow hair on their palms. They do their best.
So here's the thing. So after listening to you for a couple of like that in the car, I'm thinking, okay, one side is use more, waste more, and one side is use less, waste none. So which side is going to win this thing? Well, sustainability always wins.
Erotic. So if let's say you were Joe Biden, why wouldn't you say, by the way, my Secretary of Transportation 1 month ago passed a federal law which kicks in 6 months. Does any of you fly on an airplane? Every hand goes up in the room. Now, they talked about golf, so that was 8 people watching on TV.
Right, 8 people.
But 100% of all of us fly. Guess what's going to happen in 6 months? When that airline says that flight is delayed for more than 3 hours, they must, by law, federal law, my White House, my Pete Buttigieg, they must refund your airline ticket in cash right at the counter. And they don't get to decide what a delay is. They can't say, oh, it's weather. Oh, it's mechanical. It doesn't fucking matter. 3 hours, that's it. Oh, they lost your baggage. Guess what? They got to buy you new baggage.
All right.
And they got to buy the stuff in it. And if you have medicine, they have to buy medicine. Oh, no more sleeping on the floor of the airport because they canceled the flight. Oops, it's canceled. Tough. They must buy you a hotel room. If he had talked about that even one time and said, that's what Democrats are going to do, and we have 60 more things lined up for that if you vote for us, wouldn't that have an impression?
All right. What do you say, Alan? Get in here. Okay, you're muted.
Okay, a point that I wanted to make is if you really back up and look at all this from a really big picture perspective, what we're dealing with is the Republicans are a Confederate party. They're not a conservative party. They're actually promulgating the same kinds of ideas that the Confederate States of America and the planters before them did in the past. It started the Civil War and all that, because the deal is the rich planter class prior to the Civil War wanted to not only preserve slavery, they wanted to expand slavery, and they wanted to, do it all across the United States. And what they did through the use of slavery, basically free labor, is they were able to gather the wealth and the power of the South to themselves, just like the billionaire class that funds the Republican Party is doing today. And as a consequence, this whole ideology, all the stuff the Republicans are talking about, are just the first stages of going back to what they used to call a mudsill society. Now, back in the old days, when you built a house, part of the foundation was the mudsill. It kept the dirt from getting in the house. And they promulgated the idea that you have to have these mudsill people. For their case, it was slaves, and it was poor white people, which were the majority of the people in the South. And if you look at what the Republicans are doing by, denying, minimum wage, by, trying to gut what little bit of labor power is still left out there, slavery coming down the road, I have no doubt at some point, like Kerry was saying, slavery is going to come back. But it's all because it's part of a whole, it's the Republicans are basically 21st century Confederates, and the Confederates were the first fascist government in existence. And everybody else who's not one of those people is someone who wants to expand rights for folks, wants to expand opportunity for folks, wants to expand prosperity for people. But that's not what the Republicans are about. They're about protecting the billionaire class up here at the top, just like the Southern planters had basically bought out all of their governments. They had the money, they had the power, and they had the access. And the same thing is going on today in the United States on a much larger level. The billionaire class, with basically after Citizens United, they can just spend all the money they want. They don't have to worry about anything. They can, bribe people. The Supreme Court yesterday said, hey, or was it today? Said, hey, we're going to open the door for just a little bit of bribery here for people on the local level because, if you give it to them after the fact, it's not a bribe. Now, it doesn't matter, if I'm a government official and you say, hey, buddy, you build me a nice ride out to my house, I'll give you a little something afterwards. It's not a bribe because I received it afterwards. But that's the whole direction. It's all heading back toward the sort of Civil War mindset. If you notice the way the Constitution is set up, all this stuff with the Electoral College, the 3/5 majority, 3/5 of a person clause, that's all set up as a sop to the South. Keep the slaveholders on board so they won't bail out when we all sign up for the Constitution. As a result, Southerners controlled the presidency for the vast majority of the time between Lincoln and Washington. Washington owned slaves. Everybody except, I think, John Quincy Adams owned slaves. Everybody else was a slaveholder all the way up to Lincoln's time, when Lincoln obviously was not. I think that's the thing that we keep missing out on. That they're not just a conservative party; they're a fascist / Confederate party, Confedero-fascist, if you will. I saw Lance up there, thumbs up, shaking his head. You're on that same page with me, I guess.
Well, I mean, that does make sense that you come through back to the Confederate times, and this is exactly where we are, and it's got to be this kind of, all in on democracy or else, as our brother Lincoln, I think was. I feel like he put his life on the line to make this happen. And there you go. I mean, that's the beginning of the end of that. And that's, we can state right there at that assassination is the beginning of where we're dealing with the legacy right now. So without question, yeah. I like that a lot.
It didn't take off like it was supposed to. And then the compromise of 1876, where they let Rutherford B. Hayes be president. And he said, okay, well, I'll pull all the federal troops out of the South and reconstruct India.
I love that. Yeah.
Because the Republicans wanted to get well, the thing about Lincoln was Lincoln and Karl Marx carried on a correspondence with each other. Sure. And Lincoln was very much pro-labor and anti-capitalism. And I think if he had lived, I think the United States would have turned out as a very different country than what we have today. Personally.
I agree. 100%. Well, I mean, if you don't take care of your labor, you really can't have a long-term sustainable company out there. And the ones who do tend to do. So, but now what do you say? So, no, you can't call them mudsills anymore. Nope.
No.
So what do we got?
Sorry, I had a little autism rant bubbled up.
I appreciate that. Right on.
Anybody
else need to get in here? Greg, did you want to get in? Our last word? Gregory?
He says,
okay.
Exactly, Gregory.
Took back the land and basically created all the problems we have with race relations today.
Sure. I'll give you that.
Exactly, because Sherman, he rounded up, gave the land to the slaves. Lincoln was going to do that too, and then Lincoln died, and good old Johnson rolled in there and said, "Oh no, I'm a Democrat, and I actually own a couple slaves, so I'm going to go ahead and give the land back to all my little planter buddies." And he did.
Right.
getting back to the debate tonight, I think they both performed poorly. Which augments the fact that we have the lesser of two evils. We got two poor choices here, but I'm hoping that the voice of reason and fact will overcome and win over lies and straight out fear mongering.
Mm-hmm.
There it is.
Well, I think there you go. On that note,
Harry froze.
okay. On that note, it's around 8 o'clock, a little after 8. I think I'm going to call it. Let everybody
Yeah,
go
it's
back.
11 here, so I'm going to call
Thank
it.
you all for showing up and being part of this, and thank you, Renee, for everything. If you want to say anything, sweetheart, get in here.
No, I'm good. I love this. Thank you for watching it all together, making it easier for all of us to watch together. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. We've had hundreds of people, hundreds of live viewers the entire time on multiple simulcasts, social media channels. So I want to invite all of our listeners and viewers to please keep watching and keep commenting even after the replay. And we want to greet the replay squad who may be watching this overnight or in different time zones. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for coming back,
Thank
coming
you.
on in. All right. Thanks for
Nice to
listening.
meet all.
Okay, I'll see y'all.